This is a story about a golden retriever puppy named Andy who dreams big. One day, Andy will be a canine hero just like the ones he sees on TV. But until then, he has plenty of time for naps, Zoomies, and chasing butterflies. What will Andy's journey to heroism look like? You are about to find out. Andy was born into a litter of 6 rambunctious puppies at the Happy Tails Ranch, a place full of happy dogs and even happier people. Right away, Andy stood out from the rest. His fur was the color of a freshly polished penny, and he had eyes like melted chocolate. From the first moment he opened those eyes, Andy knew he was destined for great things. Life on the ranch was idyllic. Andy spent his days tumbling over his siblings, gnawing on chew toys and chewing up everything else he could get his paws on. One of his favorite games was unrolling the toilet paper. It didn't matter if it was in the bathroom or in the kitchen. Andy would sneakily tear off a sheet and run as fast as his little legs could carry him. That made his mom, Sadie, a very busy dog. As soon as Andy saw her coming, he would quickly try to hide the evidence of his crime. Of course, Sadie knew it was him because no one else was quite that clumsy. Another game Andy loved to play was tormenting the fan in the living room. All he needed to do was stick his nose out, wiggle his tail, and push the blades just enough so they would stop spinning. Then he'd bark furiously and jump around until someone turned it back on. Even though these were simple pleasures, they filled Andy's days with joy. He truly believed he had it all, but something was missing. You see, Andy wanted more than anything to be a canine hero, a dog that helps humans and makes their lives easier. And it wasn't just something he said. Andy took his dream seriously. He drew pictures of himself wearing a cape saving people from burning buildings, and even made a cape for himself out of an old bedsheet. Every time Andy put it on, he felt a surge of power and confidence. One day, Andy told his mom about his dream. He wanted to be a service dog just like the ones he'd seen on TV. At first, Sadie wasn't sure if this was just another one of Andy's phases. But when she looked into his determined eyes, she knew better than to dismiss his dreams. So she started his basic training right away. Andy proved to be a quick learner. He mastered the art of fetching the newspaper without knocking it over, bringing Sadie her slippers without chewing them up, and even shaking hands with anyone who asked. Of course, he still had a lot to learn before he could become a real hero. But there was one thing Andy wasn't so good at: listening. When he was out on a walk with Sadie, he couldn't help but get distracted by all the new smells, sounds, and most importantly, other dogs. Andy wanted to say hello to every dog he met, which often ended in a big fight. This made Sadie sad. She worried that Andy's lack of focus would prevent him from becoming the hero he wanted to be. So she took Andy to obedience school to learn how to walk calmly on a leash and not get distracted by other dogs. The classes were tough. Andy struggled to stay focused and often got distracted by the other dogs in class. Even after several weeks of training, Andy still had a long way to go. One day, Sadie decided to take Andy home instead of keeping him at obedience school. She was worried that he was getting discouraged and needed a break. But when Andy heard her say the word home, he wagged his tail furiously and barked excitedly. He might have been struggling at school, but he was still excited to learn. Andy knew he couldn't give up on his dream of becoming a hero. He missed the feeling of confidence and power he had when he was playing in his cape. So he went back to obedience school, this time with Sadie by his side. She stayed by his side, encouraging him to keep trying. At first, Andy still struggled to focus, but slowly he began to improve. He learned how to walk on a leash without pulling, how to sit and stay without moving, and even how to come back when he was called. Still, he hadn't learned how to ignore distractions, which meant that walks outside were still a challenge. Even so, Andy never gave up. He kept practicing, and eventually he became so good that his obedience school teacher, Miss Lucy, gave him an award for Most Improved Dog. Andy was so happy. He knew he still had a lot to learn, but he was finally on the right track. And then one day, while Andy was practicing his fetching skills, he had a breakthrough. Until that day, He'd only been able to retrieve a ball or a stick, but never anything else. Now when Miss Lucy tossed a set of keys into the air, Andy chased after them and brought them back to her without chewing them up. Miss Lucy was so impressed that she decided to start teaching Andy some more advanced tricks. She taught him how to open drawers and cabinets, how to pick up dropped items, and even how to turn off lights with a switch. Andy was thrilled. He was finally learning the skills he needed to be a real hero. Then one day, Miss Lucy brought in a special guest, a young girl named Olivia, who used a wheelchair. She had 2 dogs, a lab named Buddy and a poodle named Coco, but she needed a 3rd dog to help her with some of her other tasks. When Olivia came in, Andy was immediately drawn to her. He wagged his tail and licked her hand, and she giggled. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" she asked Andy, and he barked happily in response. Olivia then asked Andy to fetch her inhaler, which had fallen out of her bag. Andy was nervous, but he remembered everything he'd learned from Miss Lucy. He stayed focused despite the other dogs barking and managed to bring the inhaler back to Olivia without chewing it up. Olivia was overjoyed. She hugged Andy and thanked him for helping her. Andy blushed, but he was happy to help. From that day on, Andy and Olivia became the best of friends. They practiced together every day, and Andy learned even more tasks to help her with, like picking up dropped items and opening doors. Andy's training was finally paying off. He was becoming the hero he always dreamed of being. On graduation day, Andy was so excited. He knew he would finally get to meet Olivia again and show her how much he'd improved. He put on his brand new service dog vest and wagged his tail furiously. When he saw Olivia, she was so happy to see him. She ran over and gave him a big hug. "I can't believe how much you've improved," she said. "You're going to be a great service dog." Andy blushed, but he was too excited to care. He barked happily and wagged his tail. Olivia's mom, Sarah, was also very proud of Andy. She gave him a special dog-friendly cake and they all celebrated with a big party. Andy was so happy. He had everything he could ever want, a loving family, a fulfilling job, and a chance to make a real difference in the world. As Andy grew older, he continued to work hard as a service dog. He helped Olivia with all sorts of tasks, like picking up dropped items and opening doors. He also became her constant companion, going with her on all of her adventures. One day, Andy and Olivia were playing in the park. Andy was so happy. He loved his job, and he loved spending time with Olivia. As they played, Andy suddenly stopped and looked up at Olivia. He barked once, and Olivia understood. It was time to go home. They got up and started walking toward the car when suddenly Olivia stumbled and dropped her inhaler. Andy didn't hesitate. He quickly picked it up and brought it back to her. "Good boy," Olivia said, hugging Andy. "You saved me." Andy blushed, but he was happy to help. He knew that being a hero wasn't about wearing a cape or having superpowers. It was about helping others and making the world a better place. As the sun began to set, Andy and Olivia walked home together. Andy was tired, but he was also happy. He had done a good job today, and he knew that he was making a real difference in Olivia's life. When they got home, Andy lay down beside Olivia as she read a book. He snuggled up to her, feeling her warmth and smelling her familiar scent. In that moment, Andy knew that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He was Olivia's service dog, and he wouldn't trade his job for the world.